and not the dividend. But let me get your thoughts.
Thank you very much. My government is a human capital development government. That was how I termed it even before I started my campaign, because we realized from the in-depth studies that we did before even I embarked on my political journey that illiteracy, high illiteracy, was a serious hindrance to development in Sierra Leone. So I identified human capital development, and I've taken it through the first term of office. For me, it's not a matter of whether we are ready or not. The need is upon us. And for certain things, you don't have to be ready to embark on them. It is existential if we have to succeed in this 21st century, if we have to move from being at the receiving end of the fourth industrial revolution after having been at the receiving end of all the other revolutions, then we must pre-position Africa by making sure that we invest adequately and consistently in our most precious resource that we have, which is the human capital of Africa. We'll be wasting time to do any other thing in this 21st century, and especially with the looming fourth industrial revolution. We cannot survive, we cannot thrive if we do not position ourselves ahead of the curve. And so, what have I done? I have put aside 22% of discretionary budget of my country, and that goes for education. And I want to assure you that there is efficiency in the use of that, because it's not just the quantum, but also how it is used. We have made sure that we are paying for all, because one of the most difficult aspects is actually access to education. A lot of people are poor. You may say it's $10, but some people cannot even afford that. And so what have we done? We have made universal access to education for every child in Sierra Leone for the past 5 years. And that is still ongoing. But besides universal access, there is another problem, and a huge number of obstacles that make it impossible for certain people. They will start, but they will not continue. So now we are not only paying for kids to go to school, we are also buying core textbooks which are needed in schools. In some of the schools, they do not even have teaching and learning materials. So we have bought that for 12,000 schools in the whole of Sierra Leone. So we provide core textbooks, we provide teaching and learning materials for all the schools that are government schools or government-assisted schools. There is another problem of malnutrition or hunger, which affects certain homes because of their level of poverty. Now we are providing school meals for over 600,000 kids in Sierra Leone. This has not only good outcomes for education or learning, but also and health reasons. And it is also playing into retention and completion. So what we are doing is a comprehensive approach to actually making sure that they don't just have access, but they can stay in school, complete school. And as a result of that, in the whole of West Africa, we are rated as first for completion for girls in West Africa. And we also have a free tuition for girls who do STEM subjects. As a result of that policy, for nearly 200 years history of our university, for the first time, women applied for engineering more than any other since the start of Fulbe College in Sierra Leone. And since I challenged the women folk of Sierra Leone, they have consistently led in all transition exams, including the latest which came out last week. 11 of the best performing students where 8 out of 11 of the best performing students were actually girls. So that mentality that women cannot do or do not have the same mental faculty as we do is beginning to go away. We realize that even menstruation was a problem, because when they are not properly attired, they feel shy to go to school. So what do? My wife, using a particular campaign, has been providing sanitary pads free of charge for all school-going children in Sierra Leone. And I talk about menstruation without any fear or hesitation. For a lot of African homes, especially in Sierra Leone, I don't know for here, men don't talk about menstruation. And I say to them, it's just a biological action. And therefore, we should feel free, even as men, dads, to talk to our children so that they feel comfortable and provide them with the necessary support. So every year, the First Lady goes around, supplies to all the schools, and now government has come in, and we are getting support from other non-governmental agencies and also development agencies, because they have seen the utility. When we don't do that, some guys can lose up to 60, 70 days in an academic year from our own calculation. So that is helping out quite a lot. The other thing was, they can study and study and study, but because of poverty, come the transition exam, maybe to go to secondary school, there is a fee, always. They cannot afford it, they drop out. So what we have done is, we have 3 transition exams, the MPSC, the Beke, and the WAS. We are paying for all of those exam fees. We are paying all the exam fees for all of the kids in Sierra Leone. Even when they do their final transition to go to university, there is always a fee for that. And some of the kids will not get their results for a very long time because they have poor parents. What we have done is, we are providing the money for them to be able to get their results so that they don't have to wait. So access is expensive and very important. But there are a series of other obstacles that can actually nullify the effect of having paid for access if you don't address them. And that is what we have tried to do, a comprehensive approach to providing education. It is the best resource we have. And I must add here that as we talk about immigration to other countries so that they seek greener pastures, I think the youth budget can be a blessing, but we have to invest in education. And when I talk about education, we are talking about the education as a whole, talking about technical, vocational training, numeracy, and literacy, basic literacy. If we do that for our people, we can now use the youth budget. It can become an advantage and not a cause. But if we don't do that, it is going to become a bomb because we have too many youths in Africa.
Absolutely, 100%, Your Excellency. Thank you very much for those opening remarks. Please, help me to thank him. So I think for me, what is really eye-opening is the fact that Your Excellencies, are breaking down what has traditionally been a taboo subject amongst the African societies, talking about menstruation, talking about what those girl children go through, and not talking about what it means for them to be equal participants as a result of that being a taboo subject. Thank you for breaking it down. We totally appreciate that. But I wanted you to add a little more. You spoke about the importance of access, but how do we ensure that that access is equitable? Because you spoke yourself about the disadvantage of the girl child, and we also know that children who come from poor families are at a disadvantage. I come from such a background. Until one of us, my brother, was educated, we were all destined to stay in the rural areas. We broke the poverty cycle because we got access and it was equitable. How do we ensure that on a bigger scale across the country, across the continent?
Access to education.
Equitable.
Equitable.
Yeah.
We have first what we call radical inclusion.
Radical.
Radical inclusion. It's a policy by our government. And that means that irrespective of your situation, if you are a child in Sierra Leone, you should go to school. Wherever you are, whether you are disabled, in whatever state, no political colors come into play, everybody should go to school. This is radical inclusion. Before this time, there was a ban against pregnant girls going to school in Sierra Leone. And I was in favor of that, that is because of my old mindset. But when I realized that it is secondary victimization of these little kids who become pregnant going to school in their formative years, and then you take them out of school and punish them, and they become a liability to themselves, their community, and so on and so forth. I thought that was too much. And I knew I was wrong. So I made a U-turn. Now, girls who become pregnant, we attend on to the point that they can no longer stay in school. And once they give birth, we make sure they go back to school. And interestingly, they have been performing extremely well because they realize they have made the mistakes. And most times, the mistakes are done with adults, people who are supposed to know better. But we blame the child, we blame somebody in 13, 14, 15 years old, and we want her to carry that blame or sin for the rest of our life. I think that is not. So one of the things we have done is to make sure that whether you are in the village, you can access education. And we are building the necessary digital infrastructure. We have trained more teachers for quality, and also to make sure that they can go as fast as they can to be able to give the quality of education. Because what we have to do in Africa also is not just education. It must be fit for purpose education. Education that we meet the needs of the future, a digital economy. That is what we are entering. So the things we have done as when we were in school, which we are forcing our children to do, are no longer good for them. So we must look at the future and make sure that our children are acquiring the skills that will make them relevant for the future, not what we did. And that is what most of us as parents do. I did law, I want you to do law. I did medicine, you have to do medicine. No. I think you have to discuss with them. And what have we done? The youth who are going out, 33% of my cabinet are young people. When I say young people, they are youth. 33% of them are also women. I've also passed an act which is, we call the GIWI Act, which makes sure that 30% of all parliamentarians must be women. 30% of all ministers should be women. And I just appointed my cabinet, and I made sure I complied to that because I passed that bill. And in the corporate world and in other fields of endeavor, we are making sure that nothing less than 30% for now, because this is the very first time we are taking this bold action. Yeah. They are women right across Sierra Leone. That is the beginning of making sure that the women feel part of us and they can contribute. After all, their population, they are more than 50% of our population. 100%. So it's like trying to do boxing with one hand behind you. Even a lazy man like me can fight any boxer with one hand behind him.
Absolutely. You're going to lose. You can't do it with one hand. Your Excellency, thank you very much for those thoughts. Thank you. Thank you. And it's interesting. It sounds like, again, you were listening to the youth that were attending this seminar that I told you about. One of the things they said, children speak sometimes a little too forcefully. So they said, we demand that there must be a quota for young people in every cabinet in Africa. And I see that you have already started that work on your front. Thank you very much. Let's please allow me to invite Her Excellency Mariam Chabi Talata, Vice President, Republic of Benin. Again, ma'am, I'd like to invite you to share your thoughts on the summit and the work that we are doing or that we need to do. I think that's the more important part, what we really need to do before I invite you to answer my very specific question for your country. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je commence par présenter